If you've been feeling the pressure, well, then your emotions have been a mirror for the astrology. But this full moon in Cancer is here to teach you the lesson might not look like you think it looks. The goal might not actually be productivity, it might be rest, or in the very least, recognition. I'm Whitney Kranz. I'm your mystic sis. I'm your Astro bestie. And real talk, I don't have the energy for my whole intro. I have been sick for 5 days. And so with this episode, I am trying something a little new. It won't look exactly like episodes in the past, and it won't be as cleanly edited as you're used to. In fact, I almost thought I wouldn't make this episode, but because of my commitment to the astrology, to you, and as it so happens to my own personal growth, I am giving it a go. Listen, inspiration struck today just when needed it most, of course, but just when I was at my darkest. I was revisited by a quote that I shared with you in the last episode. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that soon. I know you're here for the astrology after all. So let us overview what is happening with this full moon in Cancer. After that, I'm going to stick to the basics and tell you what the heck it all means, at least for me anyway. For this episode, we are skipping reflections, integrations, and Astro style. I'm hoping you'll give me a break on this, but do let me know if you missed it. That means that I'll continue to include those segments in future episodes. So let's dive into the full moon in Cancer. It happens at 13 degrees on Saturday, January 3rd at 4 in the morning Central Time. Now, you'll see that the moon here is co-present Jupiter and very tightly opposite, of course, the sun. That's what a full moon is, but both Venus and Mars at the same time. Venus is here at 12 degrees Capricorn. The sun is at 13 degrees Capricorn, and Mars is at 14 degrees Capricorn. Just a bunch of snug little planets all in a row. Are they really snuggly though in Capricorn? I think that's what this full moon in Cancer is actually asking us. So Venus is combust here, right? Venus is so close to the rays of the sun. So is Mars. But Mars is here, as we say, in his chariot. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Mars does very, very well. His drive, his discipline, his dedication here likely wins out over Venus's own desire for comfort, joy, peace, happiness, right? But when we put Mars and Venus together, we call them the lovers. And with the lovers involved here, it invites a sense of collaboration, union of opposites, of choice, of passion and desire. What do you need to clear to make room for your desires? With whom do you need to collaborate to make those desires real? But we know desires are complicated. After all, two things can be true, right? You can want both success and rest. And the lunation across this axis, the Cancer-Capricorn axis, that represents the lightest of the light and the darkest of the dark, tells us innately that we don't have to choose. In fact, we can't choose because just as the yin and yang show us, there will always be light within the darkness and there will always be darkness in the light. So we have to get comfortable with that fact. Now, another bit of context for this lunation is the fact that the full moon is actually trying the North Node in Pisces here. Amid this Capricornian pressure of your desires, your appetite may also be more than insatiable right now. And what that tells me is that we can let that drive, we can let that desire lead us as long as that desire is the thing that makes us happy. What I'm positing with this full moon in Cancer is that this full moon in Cancer is a gut check. Are we going down the right road? Are we doing the thing that makes us happy? And just because the thing that makes us happy on one hand, like success, might be validating, aren't we also allowed to experience another thing that makes us happy, like rest, for example? Now, before we dive into what it all means, let's talk about the history of this lunation. Now, the corresponding new moon, because each full moon, this beautiful blossoming point that is symbolically and literally a full moon, was seated under the new moon in Cancer, which was at 4 degrees on June 25th. And you may remember that lunation in late June was conjunct Jupiter. It just so happened to be the lunation under which I launched this podcast. Happy 6-month anniversary to me. It doesn't look exactly like I thought it would, but you know what? I'm still doing what I love. And that, again, is one of the questions that this lunation is asking. Are you doing what you love? Whether or not you think it looks like what it should, right? The experience of that new moon in Cancer in late June was really foundational because it was square to Saturn and Neptune in Aries, where Saturn and Neptune will soon be in about a month and a half from now, in late February. That new moon in Cancer was also sextile to Mars in Virgo. So it's interesting to me to note that Mars at this new moon was sextile or in a harmonious aspect to the moon. Actually, a sextile is the nature of Venus, right? So there's this harmonious aspect to Mars. And that now here at the full moon, at the blossoming point, Mars is opposed this moon. So we're dealing with the tension of growth here, right? Growing pains and stretch marks. Now, there's another point of reflection I want to add in here. Because we have Jupiter co-present this lunation, and remember, Jupiter is actually moving back toward this lunation here, Jupiter being retrograde right now, and Venus is also obviously involved over there, so close to the sun. Now, on August 12th this year, just a couple of months after the new moon in Cancer, we saw Venus and Jupiter conjoin in Cancer at 14 degrees. Now, that's awfully close to where this lunation is, right? It's not exact, it's a 1 whole degree apart, but it is close. So look at these dates when you're reflecting on what this particular full moon in Cancer means for you. Go back to your journal entries, June 25th, August 12th. What types of themes were coming up? Now, that date I recently shared in Fault Lines and New Frontiers, the Dramatic Astrology of 2026, the workshop Alexandra Blair and Sarah Posh and I created. If you haven't picked it up yet with the workbook, you got to do it. I'll put a link in the description if you want to find out what the Astrology of 2026 has in store for you. But I shared a story during, I think, part 2 of that webinar, that during this Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Cancer, the most benefic of all conjunctions, I found myself a little disappointed. Like, wait, Venus-Jupiter in Jupiter's exaltation Cancer, shouldn't there be like gifts raining down upon us? Well, it's really interesting because sometimes the greatest gifts don't come in packages with wrapping, but they come as insights, as inspiration. And after putting myself in a conscious state of reflection to almost like shake my fist at the gods, like, how dare you not bring me some gifts under this most benefic of conjunctions? I put myself in the state of reflection, journaling to understand where my feelings were coming from, and had a realization that until that point, I had been functioning under an achiever's mindset solely as a very fiery, driven individual, as a girly with a natal fire trine and a sun ruled by Saturn. I'm sure you know that I can work. And I have a lot of drive and a lot of passion to do so. And sometimes when we work so hard, we can't see the bounty that we're creating because we're always chasing more, the next goal, the next achievement, the next bit of recognition, right? Well, there's a way that I think this realization and whatever you may have gone through on August 12th really ties to the lunation upon us. So think about it. Cancer is the birthplace, the fertile birthplace of mankind. Look what you've created since June and throughout August and eclipse season and the entire back half of 2025. Look at what you've created using what you have. So I learned that instead of always chasing achievement, what if I transitioned my mindset into a receiver's mindset, right? That is a very lunar question, a very lunar quality, the gift of receiving. And so what I received under that conjunction was this insight that has shaped, well, the entire rest of my year. And Cancer is the birthplace. Cancer is the birthplace of mankind. What have you created since June, since August? Using what you have. It doesn't have to be fancy, right? Now that we have looked back into the past and we've talked about the current context, the next couple of weeks, the next months, really, we are in for it. January 6th, 7th, 9th, 10th are a flurry of major transits. On the 6th, Venus will meet the Sun in a cazimi. On the 7th, Venus will conjoin Mars at 18 degrees. Mars will conjoin the Sun at 19 degrees. And over these 3 days, Venus, the Sun, and Mars are all moving at similar speeds. So these 3 planets, even though these cazimis fall on different days, we can look at these as triple conjunctions, as double cazimi moments, all happening between the degrees of 16 and 19 degrees Capricorn. But what happens then? Well, when a planet meets the Sun in a cazimi, it is reborn. Venus will be reborn as the evening star, and Mars will be reborn as a morning star. On January 9th and 10th, Venus, the Sun, and Mars all oppose Jupiter within the same 24 hours. So they're going through this rebirth, then to oppose Jupiter. And all of these planets, after conjoining the Sun and each other and opposing Jupiter, will move into a minor grand trine, which is a trine with 2 sextiles on either side, with Saturn and Neptune and Uranus, before these personal planets all go through this major transition as they move into Aquarius, into conjunction with Pluto, to be reinvented again. Doesn't it give the signature that these newly born planets are going through a huge transformation or catharsis even? Now, what this tells me is that the thing that we're building is transforming and taking shape right before our eyes, and it's changing us in the process. So I've already hinted a lot at it, but let's wrap this up into what this all means. I've kept asking myself since the Sagittarius new moon, how can I tell if I am failing my test? Or how can I tell if giving up is maybe the right answer? You know, this all comes to play because that Sagittarius new moon was square to Saturn and Neptune, right? But that was also conjunct my own Saturn Uranus, which means that I'm in the final leg, as I know some of you out there are as well, of the final pass of my Saturn square. Saturn teaches us a lesson. Saturn teaches us the hard lessons. And in this way, I suppose my translation here of what this all means really is a personal one of the way that I've sought meaning throughout this cycle. But here's the thing, if I've learned anything with astrology, it's that if I'm going through it, I know some of you are too, whether it may look a little differently or not. These experiences we have as the planets move around our chart are archetypal in nature. And so these big Saturn questions that were being asked amid impassioned Sagittarius season that demanded those big philosophical questions. If you'll remember, I asked in poet Mary Oliver's words, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Well, I think I found my answer, and that is less is more. That's what I plan to do. Less of the stuff that I don't want to do so that I have room for the things I love. I also quoted Thoreau, go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you've imagined. My answer, lay on a beach, please? Like, am I allowed? And, what's sad is that I'm ashamed of those answers. But earlier today, just as I was about to give up, just as I was about to throw in the towel because I've been so sick, and say that, okay, well, I guess my Saturn lesson was to learn where my boundaries are and that I should just throw in the towel just when I was about to give up. Guess what came across my Instagram feed? Damn it, yes, sadly, it was Instagram that delivered the inspiration. It was the full Mary Oliver poem. And the entire part of the Mary Oliver poem leading up to that quote, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? It struck a chord within me. I know that quote has been so often misused by the achievers everywhere in the world. But I think this poem says it a little bit differently. Now, I'm not a poet, so excuse my diction. But here's the back half of that poem. I don't know exactly what prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. When I reread that block, it showed me that even Mary Oliver wants to kneel down in the grass, idle and blessed, and stroll through the fields, which she'd been doing all day. So listen, this is the way my great teacher, Adam Allen Voss, teaches it. As Capricorn is the gateway to the gods, and Cancer is the gateway to mankind. So under this full moon, I invite you, I give you permission. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to feel. Everything right now might be asking you for more. All of this energy in Capricorn is asking for more. But this lunation coming right now at this time, opposing all of this, is at odds with this. This moon, this Cancer moon, she asks, instead of making outward effort and striving, go inward. The transformation doesn't reside in the goals you accomplish or the tasks you check off your list or the money that you make today or this week or this year. The transformation resides in how you feel about doing or not doing those things. And listen, if we're talking about Capricorn and the gateway to the gods, sometimes the gods have high expectations for us. If you have a relationship with gods, you know this. But the gods, they don't know what it's like to be human. They don't get sick like we do. This is something I've had to remind myself so many times when awoken in the middle of the night in some dream where I've been joyriding with Mercury as we trot the globe. Like, Mercury, unhand me. I need rest. I need sleep. You don't understand, right? So, what I have found this year is that sometimes instead of calling on our gods, we must call on our ancestors instead, on our ancestors and the humans around us, our family, our closest friends who are our family, right? And believe me, your ancestors, your family, your friends, all they want is for you to be comfortable and happy and fed and nourished and cared for, right? Now, everything in Capricorn right now, that is some big energy. It is creative energy. It's the cardinal energy of new beginnings. And there is time for new beginnings. Remember, in this period in time, our new moons are coming at the very end of these cycles, right? So we will have a new moon in Capricorn that will be about building the foundations under our dreams. But if we're talking creative cardinal energy, new beginnings, in order to hold all of that, you need the right container. So, what if the thing you need to build right now is a container for your comfort? After all, we forget that New Year's, all of these resolutions that we make year after year, and many of them fail and fail. Well, that's because we're making them at the darkest time of the year, at a time that we innately are meant to hibernate, to go inward, to rest, to practice the art of the hermit, right? Going inside ourselves to let our own insights grow, our own self. So, just like this lunation across the lightest and darkest part of the axis, we know that we can hold both light and dark in one container. So this container for your comfort, it can hold both success and rest. Success requires rest, and rest breeds success. But what if the goal isn't about achieving more, but recognizing how far you've come, receiving the bounties of your own success up until this point? We can't forget that all that we've created this year throughout 2025. We can realize the thing that we've built, and it might not look like the dream you imagined. Maybe it's not there yet. And maybe the dream you're building is better than you imagined. So I want to suggest that under this full moon in Cancer, that we try to be a little more human and a little less godlike. Let's allow for rest and space and emotions and feelings. We feel so many things as humans. And this full moon acts like a mirror to reflect back to us how far we've come over the last 6 months or the last year. And for me, 2025 has been a year, as I've told you, of unlearning, achieving, and relearning, receiving, of connecting with my Nordic ancestral lineage, of collaborating and creating with other astrologers, of learning how to be visible in this space on camera. It's been about growing right along with you, my audience, and of building dreams that I know I'm ready to put foundations under in 2026. And I want to know what you are building too. Why don't you go ahead and tell me in the comments what you've been working on, what this season post winter solstice has felt like for you, because it's been like a week, right? 2 weeks, and it feels like an entire season, doesn't it? Have you been owning your rest, or have you been rejecting it? Like maybe I was. Well, no more of that. If you want to know what is coming as we look ahead, remember I mentioned the time is coming to build our foundations, right? Well, why don't you go ahead and book a 2026 year ahead reading with me following the Fault Lines and New Frontiers, the Dramatic Astrology of 2026 workshop? I created a special 90-minute reading for the astrology of 2026 applied specifically to your chart. I still have my regular offerings as well. In my time of forced rest, I haven't been able to make the changes to my offerings or site as I've teased recently, but know that they are coming. Now, until I see you next time, I am wishing you a happy, happy new year.